All right, how is everybody doing today? Welcome to episode 31 of the Sounds Like Liberty podcast. I'm your host, Nicky P, here with my wonderful co-host and wife, Lizzie.
Hi.
How are we doing?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm doing okay. You're really loud in that microphone.
I know. I'm sorry. I was like waiting for
Normally you're mousy talking.
for the intro to come up, and you were drawing it out, so that I was like building up all this steam, you know.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't drawing it out. I just forgot what I was talking about because I'm really tired, and that's what happened.
Aw.
Anyways, so as said, this is episode 31 with the Launchpad Media, always launching ideas in your direction. It's a nice little morning in January right now.
It is a nice January morning.
We're gonna talk about some things today, folks. We are going to talk about a perfect circle.
Yeah,
We're gonna talk about some music
we are.
that you need to check out. And we're going to talk about... We're not going to talk about anything. We're going to talk to Jacob Lindsay,
That's right.
our guest from Tasting Anarchy.
It was a good time.
It was a good time. It was super fun. There's a little circle of friends he runs in on Twitter that I'm pretty enamored with. They're all good guys.
That's awesome. You and your Twitter posting.
I know. It's because I'm garbage people, Liz, and I'm allowed to like that kind of stuff.
Just, you know, you gotta get your cattiness out somewhere, I suppose.
So let's also get it out of the bag straight away. I officially deleted our Patreon page this past week.
Screw that noise.
Yeah, fuck that place. However, if you would like to donate, you can go to donatesll.com. Does that sound right?
That sounds right.
I'm going to have to look it up now.
It sounds right, but we should probably give people the correct address. So we'll just double check that.
We'll just have Mom keep talking.
I'm excited about this episode because we got to talk about wine, which is always exciting to me. I got my big wine questions answered. And I won't spoil it, but there's a place that I like to shop that is apparently actually a place that I'm okay to shop if I want to shop for good, cheap wine. So there you go.
I mean, I feel like he made it sound like it was drinkable, not inherently good.
I mean, he didn't say it was bad, which, you know, I'm just going binary here because I'm being slightly autistic about this whole wine thing, so.
Okay. Anyways, so supportsll.com is where you go.
Oh, there you go.
Supportsll.com, and you can sign up with one of 3 tiers. Okay? I'm also going to promote it that at the end of next week, I'm going to be reopening the Freedom Song 365. So if you missed your opportunity to get in, you're going to have another one.
Nice.
And we'll see how it goes from here on out. It's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of work.
It's been 2 weeks, and I've seen a lot of those emails before they're going out, and a lot of info you're cramming in there. It's fun stuff.
It's fairly dense. I like the hot takes.
Yeah.
And I like the controversy of the hot takes, because we don't always see eye to eye on things. Me and Sherry kind of got into it a little bit last night over, soldiers.
Oh, I see. Well, there you go.
We didn't really get into it. We just were having a discussion like civil human beings.
Right. But, I mean, if you are on that list, you get the emails, and you can also be part of the conversation about that.
Indeed. And I'd like more conversation. I always want more conversation. I want all of us talking about the music and the meaning and fuck the state. So let's move right along into our analysis portion. So today we're going to be looking at Pet by A Perfect Circle.
So creepy.
Why is it creepy?
I think it's supposed to be creepy, but it's also creepy.
Oh, I mean, did you read any of it?
Yeah, I read all of it.
Okay.
You don't think that's creepy?
I mean...
All right, fine. We're going to read these lyrics, folks, and you could tell us if you think it's creepy.
Well, I do. I think the state is inherently creepy, which is what this is about.
Okay.
Like, don't fret, precious. I'm here. Step away from the window. Go back to sleep. You gonna go, or?
Am I supposed to comment on that, or do you want me to read on?
All right. I was expecting you to comment at least my reading of it.
Yeah, your reading is extra creepy.
Yeah, let me keep going. I'm just trying to Maynard this as best I can.
Oh, is that what that was? Okay.
Lay your head down, child. I won't let the boogeyman come. Counting bodies like sheep to the rhythm of the war drums. Pay no mind to the rabble. Pay no mind to the rabble. Head down, go to sleep to the rhythm of the war drums.
Yeah, it's
it's a description of how our society functions here in the
It is,
States.
absolutely. It's a very accurate, a very good description, but the language that he's using is so, like, it's almost juvenile, like you're talking to a juvenile, and
Or like you're talking to a pet.
Right. No, absolutely.
Like a dog or a cat that's been domesticated and just hangs
Right.
on what you tell it to do.
So, thereby adding to the creepiness of the whole thing, because obviously what he's talking about is people dying while you're, just mindlessly resting.
Pay no mind what the other voices say. They don't care about you like I do. Like I do. Safe from pain and truth and choice and other poison devils. See, they don't give a fuck about you like I do. Just stay with me, safe and ignorant. Go back to sleep. Go back to sleep.
Yeah, there you go.
Do you feel like I'm gonna murder you in your sleep yet, Liz?
I mean, that is the feeling that one gets from these lyrics. They're very...
Let's see if you can out creepy me. Why don't you take over?
I would not even. Lay your head down, child. I won't let the boogeyman come. Count the bodies like
You
sheep.
sound too sweet.
I know, I do, because I'm used to saying things like these sweetly to my pets, which is why this is so creepy to me.
Fucking librarians.
Love my sexy librarian behind. Don't play with me.
I do. All right, let's continue on.
Okay. So yeah, just repeating that chorus. I'll be the one to protect you from your enemies and all your demons. I'll be the one to protect you. I will to survive in a voice of reason. I'll be the one to protect you from your enemies and your choices, son. One and the same, I must isolate you, isolate and save you from yourself.
I'm not a big fan of Perfect Circle for the record, but these are pretty good. Pretty on point.
Yeah.
So, swaying to the rhythm of the New World Order and count the bodies like sheep to the rhythm of the war drum. The boogeymen are coming. The boogeymen are coming. Keep your head down, go to sleep to the rhythm of the war drums. Stay with me, safe and ignorant. Just stay with me. Hold you and protect you from the other ones, the evil ones. Don't love you, son. Go back to sleep. I'm not sure what the song's entirely about, other than I wonder when this came out.
Yeah.
Do you have a year on it?
I'm sure I could ask Google.
I mean, what's funny is because to me, I'm just like reading into this whole
2003
thing.
is the year the album came out.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, I think maybe he's looking at this as like the perspective of the administration at that point, kind of telling you don't look behind the curtain.
Sure.
Don't pay attention. There's nothing to see over here. That whole ordeal.
I could definitely see that as being a thing.
I'd like to just dedicate this song to everyone on the left right now who suddenly is all ready to go to war or whenever somebody tells them to.
Yeah.
Still curious what happened to that anti-war left,
Yeah.
What they're up to these days.
Weird world we live in right now.
So, yeah, I mean, the lyrics are pretty explanatory.
Yeah.
Where do you think this falls on the list?
I mean, I think it paints a pretty creepy picture of government. Anyone who's
I paint a
wanting
creepy picture
to think for you. Oh no, I mean just reading the lyrics, it's clearly this is someone who's choosing to think for you. And I guess if you
convincing you that thinking is not in your best interests.
Yeah, if you really don't find that threatening, I guess you could read it kind of ambiguously, but that definitely makes me want to.
All right, so we're classifying
freedom.
it as an Eric July.
Yeah, I'm gonna go over there with the personal liberty there.
Okay, cool. I like racking up Eric July ones every now and again.
Yeah, right on.
Let's move right along here.
Okay.
Welcome to I Heard This Happen, the segment for aging hipsters. Each week we scour Bandcamp for underground new releases to wow your teenage children. So without further ado, here's new music.
All right, Liz, so what did we hear today?
So I've got an album called 1985. Good year. I was born that year. The artist is User, but it's spelled US3R.
Yeah, I can't make sense of any of that nonsense.
Yeah.
But it was good sounding when I heard.
Sure, yeah. And I liked it because it's kind of a Synthpop thing happening. It sort of made me think of like kind of a next generation King of Pop thing.
Okay. Interesting.
But he also uses a lot of that voice warping majogger.
It's called a vocoder.
Yeah. Kind of makes me think of that Emotion Heat song that was big for a minute there. There's lots of hooks. There's a few different kind of styles and angles at the pop R&B kind of thing. He's got a couple dance hall type numbers.
I don't know that I ever quite got R&B out of it myself, but
no. I think my favorite track would definitely be the last one on the record.
What's it called?
It is called Walking with a Falling Sun. It's
I like the name.
Yeah, it's got a great name. It has a great sound. It's really interesting lyrically, and I like what he's doing vocally with it. It's a really nice wrap up to the whole record. But I also like User and 1985. So I mean, it's good all the way through. It's an actual full album. I mean, there's 13 tracks.
Yeah, it was pretty impressive that she actually chose a full album. That's not
not
her go-to, as longtime listeners know.
Yeah. But yeah, that was my pick. It's from Seattle, Washington. Came out on the 1st.
Fancy.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to Canada today.
Ooh.
Yes. So mine is from Tallies, and the album is called Tallies.
I do love this record. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Yeah. Made a few memories to this record themselves.
Yes.
It came out on the 11th, and it has 11 tracks, classified as indie.
Nice.
To describe it sonically, it reminds me of the Smiths and the Sundays, with hints of Best Coast and Belinda Carlisle through the Psychedelic Furs.
Yeah, I am definitely with you on the Smiths and the Go-Go's and Best Coast. Like,
I didn't say the Go-Go's there, but whatever. Belinda Carlisle.
Okay, sorry. I really, really enjoyed the vocals on this one, and I mean the music's really pretty. It's a really enjoyable record. It's all that fun, girly, summery, poppy stuff that I enjoy. So I was really excited that you picked it.
Nice. Anyways, so my favorite track on the album is called "Not So Proud." Mm-hmm. All right. I really don't think they soaked the record in enough reverb.
No.
I can still pick out individual instruments occasionally.
Oh, okay. You could have gone for more.
You know me, I can always go for more reverb. Turn it up.
Yeah.
I can't hear enough reverb in my head.
Yeah.
Every song is catchy and has like a sing-along hook.
They do. They really do.
The singer Sarah has this, like, she has a cutesy belt.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like somewhere between like manic, pixie, and like this fierce yodel sound.
Okay.
We may need to have a talk about my feelings about like her voice and what that means to our marriage.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, frankly, if that endorsement doesn't make you want to listen to the record, I don't know what will.
Nothing. Yeah. Nothing will make them want to listen to it. But yeah, like the thing that it does remind me of Johnny Marr's guitar a lot. I think that's why it sounds a lot like the Smiths. But the thing that is interesting because some of the songs have like a far more bombastic feel. Mm-hmm. Like they are kind of boomy and noisy in a way the Smiths never really were.
No.
So it was a good way to differentiate them that way. But all in all, it was a solid record. I really enjoyed
solid.
it.
Yeah, I enjoyed every minute of it.
So, well, there you go, folks. I heard these happened.
Mm-hmm.
So, real quick, we'll just reiterate. We talked to our good friend over at Tasting Anarchy.
Tasting Anarchy.
It's an anarchist wine podcast.
And God bless those guys. We needed one of those.
I don't like wine, but I'll take your word for it.
I think it's handy.
It was a fantastic conversation.
Yes, it was.
And like I think Liz is changing religions now or something after it, so that that's its own sort of weirdness. But yeah, without further ado, let's get to this week's interview. All right, so you're the libertarian wine guy, so I like simple branding, and that's how I'm gonna think of you in my head. What do you listen to when you're tossing back whatever that beverage of grapes is that you drink?
Well, recently, so there was a period of time in my life where music was like number one most important thing. And then I started working all the time, and it kind of took a back seat. And it was just since we moved to Dallas, I've got a job. So my previous job didn't allow me to listen to music while I was coding.
Okay.
Ooh.
It was, yeah, I know. It was rough. And I didn't realize how rough it was until I left there.
I'm gonna be honest, isn't that supposed to be actually really important to coders? Like,
yep, but that's
how they find their Zen space.
Yeah, but my boss wasn't a coder, and he thought it would distract me. So he was just like, no music allowed.
Whoa.
And you know what? It's his business, you know.
Sure. Yeah,
and
for sure.
Yeah, he grew it and all that sort of stuff. And for a while, that was a great job for me. But I didn't realize until I started working at my new company how much I just absolutely missed listening to music. And I've started to get back into it a lot. I listen to a very wide range of music, but like my go-to. What's that?
I said I think it's cute that you think that.
Oh, stop.
Well, I'm sure you guys listen to more, but like I like a lot of stuff. If it sounds good, I'll listen to it. But I've got two bands, and I made a couple of notes for this because I've been listening to your guys' podcast to see what the format's like. I've got like two genres that I've continuously gone back to that well, and two bands in particular in those genres that are like my number one favorite bands and have been since I was about 13 years old.
Nice.
The one genre that is probably the longest I've been listening to is dark wave or ethereal.
Okay.
Nice.
So do you guys know the band Dead Can Dance?
I do.
Oh, that's a good band.
Okay, so that is my all-time favorite band.
Nice. It's definitely never been said before.
Oh yeah, that's definitely my all-time favorite band. I like their first album from, I think it was like 83 or something. I don't think is actually that great. It's a little too industrial for me. But then their subsequent albums were really good. In October, they just released their first album in 6 years called Dionysus, and it is awesome.
Cool.
It's back to like their 90s style, ethereal, kind of like mixing in like these old world instruments that you don't normally hear very often, and like the made up languages that they just kind of do. Like all that kind of weird stuff. It was back in it. They have one track on there in particular that I think everybody should listen to called Act 2, The Mountain.
Okay.
And it's really good. This for those of you, the listeners or whatever that don't know, this is Brendan Perry and Lisa Gerard. Both of them have been very, very influential in the dark wave kind of ethereal like movement or whatever that started in the early 80s. So you know the record label 4AD?
Yep. Big British label.
Really big British label. Really kind of brought a lot of the dark wave stuff into, I guess, modern.
Camera Obscura is on 4AD too, aren't they?
They might have been
I think
at
so.
some point, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean they did a lot of like I'm gonna list a couple of the ethereal like dark wave bands that I like and they're all on 4AD. Like this was pretty much the label for dark wave in the 80s and 90s. Like Lycia, and Lycia is still making stuff today.
Mm-hmm.
This Mortal Coil was on 4AD, and they do a lot of really good stuff.
I haven't thought of them in ages, but I actually used to listen to them quite a bit.
Yeah. Well, they're kind of a cool. It's like a concept. I guess there's two main guys that do it, and then they kind of cycle through other people from the genre. And both Lisa Gerard and Brendan Perry have done a lot of work with this Mortal Coil. They've got like a really wide range of styles that all kind of fit into the genre. So a lot of it's more like dream pop kind of. So it's like it fit in very well with kind of like the precursor to like 80, like the precursor to like kind of like the emo sort of stuff that was not like as hard, like not as hard rocky, but like a lot of like the angsty kind of whininess. But at the same time, it wasn't really about anything real. It was all about like there's this one song that they have. I might be attributing this to the wrong band, but there was a song called Kangaroo that was really popular in like 86. Like this is all before my time, but this is the way I think a lot of libertarians are. They're kind of autistic. So when they're into something, they're really into something. So they start going back and like looking at this kind of stuff.
How many John Cusack movies do I have, Liz? Because I was into John Cusack for a while.
Oh yeah. And that's just like the way that you are. Is like you get into something and then you really get into it. There's no like, oh yeah, that's okay. It's all like it's either yes or no. Very black. Which
once again is exactly why we're doing this, because if we're going to be autistic about something, at least it could be something we can talk to people about.
Well, I think like this, I've been really liking listening to your show. Like today, I was at the gym and I was listening to the episode that you guys had with the guy from. Is it we do it better or we can do it better?
That was a fun one. Yeah.
He was a lot of fun, and it's interesting to see that people like in your mind when you hear an interview with him. Like I've heard him on Lines of Liberty before, and in your mind you have a way that somebody is, and then when you hear their musical taste, you're like, wow, that person's much more complicated than I thought. Their musical taste is very different than. I'm
curious. Have you listened to the Jack Lloyd episode yet?
I don't think so.
Okay, let me just say right now, we've done how many interviews? This is like our episode. Like really, this is episode like 40 something, I think. No one has ever pushed my boundaries musically like Jack Lloyd did.
Okay, all right. I'll have to make a note to listen to that because I've been going just through and listening to your guys' backlog because I've got
listens to music fundamentally different than any human being I've ever met in my life, and it perplexes me. Okay,
that's interesting. Okay, I'll have to check that out because. I don't think I listen to music any different than normal people, but I was very involved in the local libertarian movement when I lived in Virginia Beach, and music would come up. We had a lot of musicians that would come to the meetings. I think there is something about a lot of like people who are trying to make it as musicians in particular that either attracts them to some sort of weird socialism or attracts them to like hardcore libertarian anarchist philosophy.
Yeah.
It's like either or, because like I've met, you know, the music scene in Virginia Beach was pretty good. It's mostly like well, I would say the people that I knew were more like, you know, the Pixies.
Yeah.
So it was like the Pixies.
You know the Pixies.
Yeah. I figured you guys would, but it was kind of more like Pixies alternative, but like acoustic alternative.
Yeah.
Okay.
At bars. Like that was the scene that like I would go around and listen to these guys, and it wasn't so much because I liked their music so much. It was just I liked them.
Yeah.
And so I got to show up and like hang out with these guys. And there was also nobody going and like playing at bars that was playing like dream pop or ethereal, because that's not the most conducive, I guess, to drinking beer.
Yeah.
So
well,
it's
no,
more
it's
like
to do other substances.
No, you
to
can
go with
do
that.
it. It's just it usually ends up in the bathroom with a gun in your mouth. So
that's true. And actually, that's what my best friends have always told me, and my family has always told me, like, you have the most depressing taste in music. And I'm like, well, it's nothing depressing about it. It's like Lord of the Rings through audio. It's like, it's weird. It's like unusual fantasy.
Yeah, you just you visit a place and then you're done. That's
Yeah,
all.
yeah.
his place just happens to be sad.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
I
Yeah.
get it.
Well, he's got a nice lilt in his voice, so I assume he's probably a pretty upbeat guy. He's got to get those demons out somehow.
I guess that's what it is, because like I have always really liked, like, very, not really depressing exactly, but like unusually dark sounding music. So even like dream pop is like one of my main go-tos, or ethereal dark wave, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Another one that I've always really liked, and this is not actually wasn't in my notes, but I've always really liked Depression era rockabilly.
Oh yeah.
Interesting.
And like the topic, like, you know, the Will the Circle Be Unbroken? Like Johnny Cash covered it. The Carter family had a good recording of it. Like the lyrics of it are kind of sad until you get to the end, and then it's like, but all of those types of songs that are sad, usually it comes with a triumph, and then you also kind of have like the way that the song progresses, it always ends with a triumph musically over the obstacle. So like, you know, in the song, for those of you who don't know it, like the song is basically about a guy whose mom has died, and they're kind of they're trying to he's wondering, can the family stay together now that the matriarch is gone, and this is the glue that held us together. And then toward the end of the song, they go like, well, even though she's dead and buried, and we've done that, we came together. We're singing songs that we sang when she was around. We're remembering the good times when she was around. And even though she's not here physically anymore, the spirit of our mother is still holding our family together. So it's a triumphal song, and it's like one of those things that I always wondered. Like, the matriarch of my family is my grandma, and my mom is one of 7. I'm one of 5. All of my mom's brothers, except for one of them, had a large family. And so we all come together, and we're all glued together by my grandma. But my grandma's in her mid-90s now. And it was one of those things that I was always like, well, if she's not around, is the family going to fall apart? And like those types of songs, you kind of think about it and you're like, well, no, we won't. Because like, even though she's gone, all of the stuff that we have in common is because she was this pillar in our lives. And we can still all come together around that.
I think to your comment there that there's something in music that allows us to kind of go to an emotional depth that we don't really feel comfortable doing in other ways.
Sure.
When I think, especially like, well, that's like with the circle being broken in that particular time period, I don't like, that was what music was there for.
Oh yeah.
You needed music to uplift, because there was nothing uplifting happening in the world that was sure outside of that.
Let me rein it back in, because I got one other genre and one other band that has been with me for a long time.
All right.
That I really like. So I really also love dark cabaret or cello rock. So
okay.
Sometimes they call it horror pop. Do you know the band Rasputina?
No, I do not. I was thinking Murder by Death the way you were describing it, but
no. So Rasputina was this band that started in like 92 or 93. The cellist is the tour cellist from Nirvana. And then on their second album, they signed up the drummer from Nine Inch Nails.
Ooh.
Chris, I think his name's Chris Vrenna, or Chris, I don't remember his name, but it's Chris something.
Yeah.
He was the drummer for Nine Inch Nails. He was also the tour drummist for Marilyn Manson. And
I gotta call John about that then. I want to know
I think this is a great band. And actually, when he joined, their first album's okay. Their second album, when he joined, is called How I Quit the Forest. And he brought this percussion element to the cello rock that really tied it together.
Interesting.
And I didn't realize how important the percussion part was until they released another album in like 2012 or maybe 2011 called Sister Kinderhook.
Mm-hmm.
And
how do I know
Sister Kinderhook didn't have the percussion the same way as the other ones. It had just like snare drum and hi-hat. So it didn't have like the bass, a lot of the bass and like stuff that was going on with him. And it was a very, very different album. And I liked it still. And there's actually one really good song. It took me a long time to warm up to it, but they had like an a cappella version of a song from, I think it was from their album Cabin Fever, but it was like an a cappella version of this song called, I'm blanking on the name. I can't remember, but it's basically about them raising a doll from like, so they perform a black mass and they raise a doll from the dead, kind of, or like from like not the dead.
Going.
Yeah. So like in the song, it's they find this doll and they put together like a black mass to raise the doll to life.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's like, that's what the song's about. Well, they do like an a cappella version of it in Sister Kinderhook that I think is very good. And then the other songs are also very good in that album, but it took me a long time to warm up to it because it's very different than their other albums. They had How We Quit the Forest was a really good album. This is like mid 90s, I think it came out. They had one that was called The Old Headboard, which I don't know exactly what it's about, but I think it's about like somebody getting married to an older man at an age where they are too young to have made the decision to get married. I think that's what it's about, but I don't know for sure. That's just what I gather from it. Then they had an album called Cabin Fever that was really good, that had I remember now the song. It's called Gingerbread Coffin. That's what it's called. Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
So they had another album called Cabin Fever, and that had a really good song at the end called A Quitter that's about suicide.
Okay.
And incredibly depressing again, but like, I'm an upbeat guy, but I love the song. It's very touching. And it's like, it goes through like all of the reasons why I assume it's a girl because all the singers are girls. It's a girl kind of going through like, nobody pays attention to her. Nobody will really miss that she's gone. Like nobody asked her to the dance in high school, all that kind of stuff. So it kind of goes through that. And then at the end of it, there's like a reincarnation aspect to it. So there's like a pause for like 30 seconds or a minute, like a really long pause. And then you hear like baby's footsteps and the song changes. And to me, this is what I'm hearing in it, is that like the person who killed themselves has been reincarnated.
Interesting.
As like a baby, and they get a second chance. So it's kind of like a little bit of a like triumphal song in that regard.
Everything you just said is super creepy, and I'm really excited to go listen to it now.
Right? That seems
we're verging on the dude. We're gonna have to continue this another time because I gotta go listen to this.
It's good. And then they had their best. I think their best album was their fourth album. It was called O Perilous World.
I have to listen to this band because like the name didn't sound crazy familiar, but at the same time, like all of the albums do.
Okay.
So I'm wondering if it's something I downloaded the discography and like.
Yeah, you might recognize certain songs. So I don't remember which album it's on, but they had a song called Transylvanian Concubine.
That does sound really familiar too. It
was in the Buffy soundtrack for Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Interesting.
So that's where I think either my dad introduced me to this band, because my dad and I have very similar tastes in music. So either he introduced me to this or I got it from the Buffy soundtrack. And I think I really like Transylvanian Concubine. That's a little bit harder, but it's also like they have like it's all cello rock. So it's two cellists and a drummer. And it's like, they'll do a lot of like cello distortion. So it sounds really raw and cool. But in O Perilous World, there's two really good songs on it. Well, the whole album is great, but there's two really good ones. One's called The Pruning, and it's about so I'm the type of guy who like projects my own what things are about, even if they're not really about that.
Because everybody does that.
Yeah. I think The Pruning is about the agricultural revolution. So it's about like the people who used to, instead of like having like a plot of land to farm, they would just kind of like throw the seeds as they went, and then they'd come back later and those would be grown back up, versus the people who are like, this is the land that we're going to use to grow food. So because at the end of the song, they have like the gardener and the other person in the song have like a conversation, and they go like, we each disturbed the earth, but you, my friend, you did it first. You did it first, la-da-dee, la-da-do, or whatever. And it's, to me, it's like they're like discussing like who is shittier for the planet. I guess like it's an interesting, and it's just a great song too, but it's also very fanciful, and it's about like they bring up like a lot of like Christian imagery where like you build, like one of them, they go, you can build such fantastic palaces on foundations of straw, which is kind of like the building, the wise man built his house upon the rock and the foolish man built his house on the sand. Like, to me, that's like analogous, is that you built it on straw. You can build these fantastic palaces, but like it's all going to be gone unless you have the foundation that it's going to be set. So they've got a lot of cool stuff on that. They have another one called Draconian Crackdown, and it's just basically about like government oppression. So and I don't know if they're, I don't know their politics. They're from Brooklyn, so I assume they're probably some sort of left-wingers. But they have a lot of stuff in, and I get this from left-wingers a lot, or people who come from the left wing, is they do correctly identify a lot of problems.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Bernie was right about where the problems lie. Just he does not fix them.
Yeah, exactly. Or like, the people who are doing the Occupy Wall Street, like I don't know if they were identifying that there was a problem in the financial sector. They just weren't identifying that it was the Federal Reserve that was the problem, not necessarily Wall Street. But granted, there's tons of blame to go on Wall Street too. But so this band, they do have a lot of stuff like that too, where they will, like, some of their live albums are really cute, where they talk about like their surveillance state. So they'll be like the lead singer, her name is Melora. So Melora will kind of like come on and she'll be like, I just heard about this government idea that just sounds so cute sounding. And what they're going to do is they're going to take a grain of rice and they're going to stick it under all of our skin so that they know exactly what we're doing and when we need protection. And it's like a very silly thing. And she goes like, it just sounds so cute and I'm going to be the first one to go get it. But it's very clear that it's like this overarching like evilness of the state where like anyways, I highly recommend the band. They're really great. There's also another one in that same genre she doesn't put out very much anymore. She's on Bandcamp, but I don't think she's released anything since like 2014. And this was like kind of when I was starting to fall out of music, was like early 2010s. And so I was really listening to her. She had a really great album called What I Want From You Is Sweet. And this is her, I guess it's Orion Regal Dominis or something like that. She's on Bandcamp. Her newer albums are a lot more techno-y pop kind of sounding. They're not as much. The way that it used to be was much more like harpsichord-y sounding. So she would use like an auto harp in a lot of her stuff, and it was kind of like but it was also through like a synthesizer, so it would make these kind of like weird noises. It was really interesting. But she had two really great songs that I liked for a long time, and it's sort of I would associate her with Dark Cabaret. I don't know if she would associate herself with that, but she had one called Fake Your Death If You Need To. It was really good, and it was about like when your life gets too tough, just like go dig up a corpse that's roughly your size and like put some of your own blood into these like paper mache, and then like put the paper mache on the corpse and then burn your house down. And when they find it, your DNA will be on the corpse. And then you can just like start over.
All right.
That's amazing.
I love how off the rails this has been, but it's been exactly what I wanted. The guest is like, they know stuff about music, and like I'm incredibly interested in what he's talking about. So I'm actually listening as opposed to completely interjecting all the time. But I'm over here and I'm having difficulty paying attention because I'm just like, oh my god, what name for the episode could I possibly come up with that is going to warrant like the experience I'm having right now?
It's pretty amazing. It's awesome.
She's got several good songs. Her other good song is called "Drink Yourself to Death."
I have a song called "Drink Yourself to Death."
Oh, really? Okay. Well, you should compare notes.
I'm kind of curious now.
Hers, from my opinion on this song, it's from a perspective of a kid whose father or mother is an alcoholic.
Okay.
And they're just like, and they've gotten old enough that they don't need them anymore. So they're just saying like, look, you've ruined my life. Drink yourself to death. I don't really care anymore.
Gotcha.
That's what I gathered from that song. It's really good. She also has a very like spooky voice. Mm-hmm. So, and it's very, very, very high pitch and, it's very spooky. Like I really like spooky music. So
for the record, my true passion is horror anyways. So like H.P. Lovecraft and Clive Barker and all that stuff is the area I come from. So you're never going to do me wrong by giving me creepy stuff. Yeah.
So you might really like this stuff. It's very different. Like I think from what I gathered from listening to your shows, you guys are more, well, I don't know about you guys, but, you're into more like screamcore or hardcore type stuff. Is that the impression I give people off?
I mean, a lot of the bands that you come up with for shows are in that genre, I feel like.
Okay.
I think that's just where people are doing half decent music now, maybe.
But let me get. I got two more things I want to give that I'll throw a wrench into the creepiness because those are my two main areas that I really like. But I also really like North Indian classical music.
Ooh, cool.
What does that mean? What's North Indian classical music?
So do you know? Like when the Beatles went to India and they were like learning like all this like weird Indian hippie stuff.
Yeah,
like sitar.
A lot of the music, sitar and a lot of that stuff. A lot of those instruments are in the North Indian classical music scene or whatever that's going on. There's one artist in particular that I really think is awesome, and I believe that her dad is one of the ones that taught George Harrison like sitar stuff.
Interesting.
But I don't know for sure. That's what's going on in my mind, but I could be totally wrong on that. But her name is Nina Virdi.
Okay.
I've also seen her on YouTube as Nina Burmy, so I don't know which is correct.
Maybe she's married. Who knows?
It could be on Spotify. She's Nina Virdi, and I think she is a really, and it sort of does, I guess, kind of come off the creepy vibe because you know there's a cultural aspect to what sounds happy and what sounds sad in music. And I think a lot of like Middle Eastern and North Indian classical music has a lot of Middle Eastern influence and a lot of influence that we wouldn't necessarily think of as coming out of India.
Well, like you were saying, there is the fact of the matter is that we have a very specific type of scale that we use in Western music, which once you break out into the microtonal scales in other cultures, it's kind of cute and quaint how our music works.
Yeah, exactly. If you're into like percussion in particular, I think North Indian classical music is really interesting because they have a lot of these hand drums. And the hand drum noises that they make are very, very close to like vocal noises that humans make.
Yeah.
So they'll have like, but they're really fast. And like watching the videos on YouTube is fascinating because they're just like, and like they're doing stuff with their hands that you're like, how on earth can you do that?
And a lot of, from what I remember, a lot of the stringed instruments even that they use in India, they all have like pads where like you change the way the instrument sounds fundamentally by they're not bladders, but the idea is like, there's way, even stringed instruments are not just stringed instruments, they're this hybrid percussion slash
exactly
strings.
Yeah,
it's really interesting to me.
It really is. They'll come out with these really unusual sounds, and they also have a lot of fixed reed instruments that are different than the fixed reed instruments that we have. They're not like clarinet or saxophone or those types of things. They're more like, I would say that they're closer to like bagpipes than anything else, but it's more like just the chanter portion of a bagpipe, not the drones. Okay. So you'll have these very quick but they're so precisely tuned that it almost you can almost not differentiate when like somebody's singing and when somebody's playing one of these instruments because the tone is so close to the human voice. it's so interesting to see it going in. Like, and then Nina Verdi, she's just a great vocalist, and they do a lot of like. I don't know if she's saying words because I don't speak Indian or any of the types of Indian.
Hindi, is that what they call that? Or
I don't. A lot of dialects.
I'm not sure which dialect North Indians have, but they do a lot of like scale stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So you can actually go and see her do it on YouTube. It's not in very many of her albums, but she'll do this thing where she'll be like, and she'll do like the voice stuff for it, and then the person with the sitar or the person with the drums or something like that will mimic what she's doing with her voice with their instrument.
That's cool.
It's wild. It's so interesting. And now that I do a lot of coding and stuff, like I sit there and like I listen to stuff while I'm coding, and this is more like anything with lyrics is sometimes distracting for me when I'm really trying to solve a problem. But if it's just like if it's in a different language or if it's just instrumental, then it's very helpful to me coding, because then I can kind of get into the rhythm and like think and get into the zone of like coding.
I admire people that can do the different languages in music thing.
It really bugs you?
No, that doesn't bug me. It's just incredibly distracting because I want to go and look up what they're saying. Like I want the translation because if you're going to have words are important.
Yeah.
So
well, see, like,
I want to know.
Particularly in North Indian classical music, I think that the words are important, but a lot of times I think that they're actually singing from the Vedic scripts or whatever. It's in Sanskrit, so nobody really speaks it anyways. Okay. So it's more like they're using their voice as an instrument rather than as a means of conveying a message. So the language that they're using in there, it probably does have a message in it, but the message is so old that it's kind of lost on the modern audience. And the spirit of the music is coming out. And this is another thing I really like about music this old. I mean, they've got stuff in India that has been orally passed down, and they're thinking that they can trace this back to like 1500 or 15,000 BC.
Wow.
So like that they've been singing the same song over and over and over and over and over and over again for years and years and years. And this is more from like the kind of obscure religions that they have there, but they will have passed this down orally for so long, and they do know based on recordings from the 40s and 50s that even though this is an oral tradition still, and they're still teaching kids in the oral sense, since the 40s and 50s, and the kids that are being taught today, there is no difference in what they're saying. It's just that they have no concept then or now, or probably for the last several thousand years, of what it is exactly they're saying. So it's like a degree of immortality for their culture that has like come forward thousands of years. It's really interesting.
From a cultural standpoint, that is super cool. And I love learning about languages and cultures. And,
I do too. Well,
traditions and
like
stuff.
I said,
So awesome.
comparative religion was one of my first passions. So
it's very, very interesting. Then the last one I'll give you guys is do you know the Penguin Cafe Orchestra?
No, do not.
Okay. So Penguin Cafe Orchestra is just an instrumental group, and I think a lot of what they're doing with orchestral instruments is very interesting. It's not like Wagner or Bach, all those things I appreciate, but like this is like a more of a like a jazz influence kind of fusion mix with orchestral instruments. It's very interesting. I really like it a lot. They do a lot of like reply or like voice and response kind of things where like one is something and then the other one will say something back, and so like you'll have a conversation going on between these different instruments. It's really very interesting. And then they'll join together in a chorus. It's very, very good stuff. I don't know that they're still making things. They were coming out with a lot of albums in the 90s, and granted, like I said, I'm only 31, but most of my musical taste is from like 80s and 90s, and then like those bands that started then that continued into nowadays.
Well, yeah, I'm assuming you're a libertarian. You're probably a precocious child, so.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about that. I wasn't one of those or nothing.
I'm sure.
So, nice. Oh, Liz, what are the normal questions we ask there?
Okay,
we killed it all before we ever even got to the questions, I think.
I know, yeah. We usually ask about...
I gave a really open-ended question, got a really awesome open-ended answer.
Yeah, I mean, we could just skip to the albums if we want.
We could probably skip to the albums. Depends on him, how much time you got.
I've got plenty of time. My wife's getting her nails done, so
nice.
I've got a lot of time.
All right. Well,
then we could ask about
I feel like it would waste time to ask him how he came to libertarianism at this point, or how he came to the liberty movement. So,
yeah, I mean, if you guys really want to see how I came to the liberty movement, I went pretty in depth with it with Car Campit and Bird Archist over on the Friends Against Government podcast.
The most recent one, or have you been on there a couple times?
Yeah. So they do have they've got kind of like a
those guys are fun.
Yeah, or you can go listen to episode 0 of Tasting Anarchy. We talked about that. Mason and I have been libertarian friends for about 10 years. Wow. And we met through libertarianism, and we've just become good friends since then. And so pretty much the reason we do our show is mostly to stay in touch with each other, but also because we think there's this branch of libertarianism that is underfed, which is the cultural and non-political side.
For sure.
Like I said, we can all sit and talk philosophy forever. And I don't know how much further along that gets us, because all that does is seem to sow division in minuscule little ideas when we agree on 90% of the stuff with most of the people we talk to.
Right.
I think if we all go and watch the same bands or enjoy the same movies, in the case of our buddies over at Actual Anarchy, or you know, can talk about wine and stuff like that, and like build actual human connections with people that we have political ground with, I think we'll get a lot further.
You know, we can see this a lot too, and like what you guys talk about with the music is that like Tom Woods has made lots of friends with his love of prog rock.
Oh yeah.
And it's just that music is one of those things that unites people, and especially if you think you're the only one. And like, I mean, I've had this for years. I don't know very many other people who listen to ethereal or cello rock. And so when I find that one person, I'm like, I got to talk to you about
right now. Like, yeah, all about that.
Yeah, it's a tough genre sometimes to find. Like my wife and I have been married for almost 4 years, and I just a couple of months ago introduced her to music I like.
Aww.
And it wasn't like a fear of rejection. It was that she listens to like house music.
Okay.
So like she's Ukrainian, so she listens mostly like techno and that sort of thing.
Aww.
And it to me, my music was so different than hers. I was like, well, she won't like it, so I'll just put my headphones on and listen. And then like we were driving long distance somewhere in the car, and I was like, you know what? I don't want to listen to techno pop for a while. Like, let's just listen to the music I like. And we put it on. She's like, I love this.
Aww.
This is great. Like, it's really good music. How come you never like shared it with me? I was like, I didn't think you'd like it. And so turns out.
Well, it boils down, I think, to one of my favorite lines from a John Cusack movie. And he goes, it's not what you are like, it's what you like.
Yeah.
You find common ground with people, you'll make it work.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, if you tell me your favorite Weezer album is anything but Pinkerton or Blue, we're garbage people, and we have nothing in common.
Oh.
You know, I've been listening to your guys' shows, so I have notes prepped for the two other questions you normally ask.
Sure.
So, like, what songs remind me of a specific time in my life?
Soundtrack question.
That's a fun one.
Yeah. So I prepared that, and it took me a while to think of it, but there are a lot of songs that kind of bring stuff up. One, like, I have a very specific time in my 20s.
This sounds dangerous, because considering the music you listen to, I assume that you have a body buried somewhere.
You think this is going to throw a wrench into your assumption, though. There was a specific time in my 20s, and every time I hear this song, it brings back like the smells, the things I was thinking about, like the things I was worried about, all these things that don't really matter anymore, but at the time, like, were important to me. And like the smell of, like, you know how like every family has a smell. Mm-hmm. So like a girl I was dating at the time, like the smell of her family's house, or like, and it all comes back whenever I hear this song. And it's, to me, a cheesy song, but it is so, it's like that time and place where, like, it's just like stuck in that time and place. And that is that song, Fuck You by CeeLo Green.
That's awesome.
Nice.
Every time I hear that song, it's like a time vortex. It like puts me back to that time when I was like 23, 24. And
it was a fun summer.
It was a good time. I was listening to the radio a lot. It was kind of,
the SJWs hadn't quite taken over everything yet.
Exactly, yeah. And it was, I think it was like the end of the Ron Paul movement, and so there was still some momentum going on. Like, it was like 2013, 2014. There was still some hope. It was, and
see, I'm jealous. I'm jealous of you guys that actually came through that.
I actually
new on this myself. Like, I think probably only like legitimately been in the movement for about 2 years.
Okay.
And so,
well, it's kind of a weird thing because even though Mason and I were around during that time, we were not Ron Paul supporters.
mm-hmm.
And it was kind of a weird thing is that both he and I were new to the movement in 2008 when Bob Barr was running on the Libertarian ticket. And I came to the thing because I was a supporter of Bob Barr. Mason came because he was looking for other people who were interested in psychedelics. And
this is my people is.
We kind of like missed the Ron Paul boat. I don't think either him or me became Ron Paul fans until like 2014 or 2015. Oh, wow. Like there was a lot of years where we were like, well, he's a Republican. We just don't want to listen to what he has to say. And we were just much more interested. I think it was becoming ANCAPs that really got us interested in Ron Paul because we started getting interested in like Tom Woods and Lou Rockwell and these kind of harder core ANCAPs. And they were always talking so highly of Ron Paul that both of us were kind of like, well, maybe we need to go back and reconsider Ron Paul. And we started listening to his stuff, reading his books, that sort of thing. And we got into it, but we sort of missed the boat on it. I actually had a really bitter spot with Ron Paul from the 2012 campaign, not because of Ron Paul, because, you know, he's a great guy, but because of the Ron Paul supporters in Virginia Beach at the time. I was the head of the Young Libertarians, and I was trying to gear up the election for Gary Johnson in 2012, the first time he ran. And they said, take a break from Gary Johnson, come help us with Ron Paul. And once he loses, basically, none of them had any illusions that he was going to get the nomination. Once he loses, we'll go help you with Gary Johnson. And I was like, great, alliance with these kind of like minarchist Republicans. We'll do that. I was full force behind Ron Paul, even though like I wasn't a huge supporter of his. I was just like, I'm going to help you guys do the logistics of it, putting up the signs, going door to door, knocking, handing out literature, that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. So he loses the thing. I call up this guy. I always called him High Pants Adam's Apple because I don't remember his real name, but that's what he. I call him up and I'm like, all right, so Ron Paul lost. You guys ready to come help me out with the Gary Johnson campaign? I got these signs. I got this literature. We're going to go out and do this and stuff. And they were like, we're supporting Romney. Oh, and I was like, exactly. I was so upset by that. And I was just like, I'm not going to have anything to do with you guys anymore. The Young Libertarians will not associate with you. Now, granted, like the Young Libertarians in Virginia Beach was like me and 5 other people. So yeah. it wasn't that big of a deal. But I had like a thing stuck in my craw for a while about that. And it was not very happy. But
see, well, I'm kind of entertained by it. Like I didn't come across Arvin Vohra sooner. Like,
yeah, I actually like Arvin Vohra.
I have mixed feelings about Arvin Vohra. I think he has poor word choices and a bad sense. His politics aren't wrong. I have no issue with his politics. I think
right. Well, I would agree with you on that. I think he's a good libertarian. I don't know that he's a great vice chair.
For me, it's not even that. Like, I understand we hate like the things that we don't like. Yeah. I think that he should focus more on that's great, but why don't you worry about the conversations people are actually having, not trying to make them have a conversation that you want to have.
That makes sense.
That's definitely a huge libertarian thing in general. Like,
yeah,
like you're bitching about this. I know we should be talking about the Fed, but you don't want to talk about the Fed, so you're going to discredit anything I say, anyways. Like, it's the whole. Why are we talking about age of consent laws? Yeah, I'm an ANCAP. I know how we feel about it.
Yeah,
but nobody cares.
It also,
you're a pedophile.
I mean, this is right, exactly. Well, and a good example for this was in the 2008 election. Even libertarians care about these things because in the 2008 nomination process, I think it was in Vegas, Mary Ruitt should have, in my opinion, been the libertarian nominee for president. And she really led me to ANCAP stuff. Her book, Healing Our World, I think is one of the best, most genuine, like compassionate reasonings for why you should be anti-government. But she was running for the nomination in 2008, and Wade Allen Root, who ended up being Bob Barr's running mate, spread all of these rumors about her being like pro-pedophile and all that sort of stuff. And none of it was true. It was all just based off of these things where she was like, well, this is not really a government issue. what's the difference between somebody who is 17 years old, 11 months and 30 days and somebody who's 18 years old? Like, there's not really a difference. It's a continuum issue, and this is not something the federal government should be involved in. I mean, we can definitely hold this on the local level.
Let's not point out the obvious that by 14 in the 1700s, you were married with kids and
Right, exactly.
And by 30, you were dead.
Yeah, but people care about the optics of it in these days. And like 18, it's an arbitrary number. I mean, I know plenty of people who are my age, 31 years old, who are complete idiots and probably shouldn't be running their life.
Absolutely.
But
well, they're not. That's part of the issue.
Well, yeah, exactly. So like there's a whole, it's a continuum issue. It's, I don't remember who said this, but they said, like, if you have a whole line of paint buckets that are white and you start dropping one drop of red paint into the first one, then two in the second one, three in the third one, and so on and so forth, at what point does that bucket of white paint become red? And so you've got these two extremes where you are like, well, age of consent for a 40-year-old is very clear that 40, you can make your own age of consent. But it's also very clear that, like, for a 3-year-old, they can't consent. So, like, where is the line in between, and why do we draw it at 18? Like, but the thing is that we are so far away from having that conversation out of libertarian circles,
Right?
that that's not a hill you should die on. The hill you should die on would be
you're allowed to protect yourself, let alone decide if your kids. We can't. You're not allowed to let your kid out in your front lawn. Without watching them. You think they're going to let you decide when your kid's allowed to have sex?
It's so bizarre too that, like, these things that are going on where you can't let your kid play on the front lawn or walk down to the park is, I don't know about you guys, but I think maybe and it may be like an internet thing, but like I was on the very end of that generation where, for me, being the second oldest in my family of 5, I was given sort of the free reign to go outside until the streetlights come on and then come home.
Yeah, I'm aware of that generation.
Yeah, but my youngest sister, who is, I think, now 22, she was not allowed to do that, and it wasn't because my parents didn't allow her. It was because every time she would go to the park to play by herself, the cops would come.
Yeah, no, I know.
Yeah.
And we're not that far apart in age. We're less than 10 years apart. And
it's an important 10 years, man.
It is an important 10 years, like how major of a shift it is. I mean, we got internet in 92 before she was born, so she doesn't remember when we didn't have internet, but she is part of the generation where internet is definitely part of their life. Whereas, like, there was a time when it was unusual for me to have internet because not many people had it. So there is this some sort of dynamic going on, I think, where we're more connected than ever, but also disconnected from reality than ever. And you can definitely see it in my family, going from like my older sister all the way to my youngest sister, and just how much things have changed. And we're all 2 years apart. So it's like my older sister, computer illiterate, doesn't know how to work her smartphone, than me, who's a developer.
Yeah.
And like fully engrossed in computers, but also is not great with things. Like, it took me a while to get used to Spotify. And I think it was just because, like, I learned the things that I knew, and then I just was like, I don't really want to know anything else. And then when Dionysus from Dead Can Dance came out a couple of months ago, I was like, I got to get on Spotify because I don't want to have to, like, plug my phone in and charge it up while I'm listening to this album. I want to, like, have it on Spotify so I can, like, stop there, then turn it back on my phone and be in the same place and all that sort of thing. And so I got into that. But then, like, my sister, just 2 years down from me, like, she is full internet life on social media. And then each one lower, it's sort of the same thing, except for my sister 2 down from me. She's like a throwback hippie, and she lives in the woods. So she doesn't have technology, but
it's funny.
I think that's what happened to me. I just, like, my whole family is very...
but once again, you have a very specific,
very conservative kind of Luddite thing going on.
Yeah, your family generally would fall in the Luddite, which is funny because your brother is super.
You grew up in like a hardcore Southern Baptist family?
Yeah, there was something along those lines. Like, they're all super religious on my mom's side. They're all super military on my dad's side. So everything was, like, super conservative and very just reserved.
So you and I grew up very similar because we were pretty hardcore Southern Baptists when I was a kid, and my dad's a Navy SEAL, so he's still active duty. I became a Quaker several years ago, and it went over okay. My parents were like, well, we raised you to, think for yourself, and we trust that, you know what God's bringing you to and all that sort of stuff. But sort of the same dynamic. I think you and I probably came from very similar families.
I imagine so, yeah.
Yeah.
I've just always been weird. Even amongst the people that know me, I'm weird.
Nice.
Yeah.
I looked at my dad yesterday at one of my cousin's weddings, and I said, Dad, congratulations. You have 4 very odd children. Somehow they're all very odd in very different ways.
Well, I mean, that's great. I mean, like, this is the spice of life, is you got to have weird people.
Right?
They were just cranking them out, apparently.
That's why I love your family. It's awesome. Okay, so
yeah,
the big question. I'm excited that you did so much prepreration, because it's like we don't even have to like massage this into a show. You're just
I know, but I like the massaging too. Those are fun, just different.
Okay. So the big question is the 5 albums question?
Yes.
All right. So I've got 5 albums that I think everybody should listen to.
Nice.
And first album is not a surprise. It's Dionysus. Came out in October, I think, by Dead Can Dance. It's all on Spotify. You don't have to pay for it at all or anything. Like, that's one of the cool things about Spotify. You don't have to pay unless you want to have commercial free, which I do. So I do pay for it. But at the same time, you don't have to. So that's awesome.
As a musician myself, I still like to give money to artists whenever I can too.
I think it's like completely foreign to like our kids. They're like, wait, you used to pay for music? What?
Yeah.
Why did you pay to listen to things?
This is one of the reasons why I like Bandcamp, because you can find interesting new stuff, and you can pay per track if you want just the track and just be like, yeah, I like this. Because even back in, we were downloading music, doing like internet piracy stuff in like '98.
Oh, sure.
We were stealing music really early, but my dad had this thing where he's like, this was even before like everybody was trying to like crack down on it. He was like, if you want these guys to still make music, we got to go buy their merch.
Yeah.
So I had a ton of Dead Can Dance t-shirts and a bunch of Rasputina t-shirts and stuff like that, because we would go online and we would order their shirts, or we'd order their vinyls. And we didn't even have a record player that worked anymore, but we would order vinyls from them and stuff. Like, this was like early 2000s, late 90s. We had all these weird things going on. But my dad had a very diverse taste in music, and he and I liked a lot of the same bands, particularly Dead Can Dance. And so their latest album, Dionysus, is great. It's their first album in 6 years. Their previous album that came out in 2012, I thought was pretty good, but not really. It's not up to snuff. I think that this one really showcases how unusual and bizarre they are, and
it's the best thing to showcase.
Yeah, it is. It's great, and they have some music videos for it that are like super bizarre and weird. Like, it's got this like whole like integrated like neo-pagan imagery going on in it with like yarn and like body paint and like strange things like that. And so it's a great album. They've got a lot of really good videos on YouTube that kind of go with it. Actually, I think only 2, but that's a lot in my mind. But I highly recommend this album. When I heard it, I was like, holy cow, they finally came out with a really good album. So their last album that I really toted a lot, and this is going to be like a sub recommendation of this. If you like Dionysus, go back and listen to their 1993 album, Into the Labyrinth. I think that was their other best album, and it has some of their like just greatest songs on it. That's one of my favorite ones. But Dionysus, I think it's a good introduction, and it's new, so I think that's pretty cool.
Cool.
The second album is O Perilous World by Rasputina. I think that's their best album they've ever come out with. Some of their newer stuff, like I was saying, they have Sister Kinderhook was a little bit weird, but if you like O Perilous World, maybe go listen to some of their other stuff before you listen to Sister Kinderhook, because there's so little bass drum in it. It makes it sound very like very high and treble. It's kind of weird sounding.
I listen to Rockabilly Man, so that's actually
okay. It's simple for that.
That's what we call a rockabilly kit: the hi hat and the snare.
Yeah, it's hi hat, snare, no bass. Yeah, it's very interesting. And they also, in Sister Kinderhook, they had a different lineup. I don't think that Melora was part of the group at that time, even though she's a founder. She had a baby in 2009 or 2010, I think, and was out of the group for a while. And they had these 2 other cellists and a new drummer. The guy from 9 Inch Nails, he hasn't done anything with them since like 2006. But they've circled or cycled through other drummers, and they're all a little bit different. The cellists are a little bit different, and also in Sister Kinderhook, and if it is Melora, her voice just changed a little bit. It's a lot more of like a shaky voice, whereas her old voice was much more of like a sultry bedroom voice. And I just like that voice better than the whole like high pitched like gramophone sounding voice.
Okay.
Then this is going to throw a wrench into your guys' opinion of my musical taste, although in some ways it is the same. Kid Cudi's album "Man on the Moon."
Haven't changed anything. That fits.
Oh no, I think that's a great album.
I think he's a very inventive rapper.
He's a really inventive rapper. I think he is like borderline anarchist, and it may be me projecting my own opinion onto his lyrics, but when you listen to a lot of it, it's like a man displaced, particularly "Man on the Moon," because that's a song that tells a story, or an album that tells a story. So most of those tracks I think fit together very well, and it kind of like develops a story. Either the story is about an alien, or the story is about him leaving Cleveland, and then when he comes back, he doesn't fit anymore, and they kind of treat him like an alien. So like that, I think is like a lot of those tracks are sort of about, and I think he's actually had some sort of issues with like depression and stuff, but I think it's a lot of those songs are about him feeling like he's not part of the space where he should fit, or where he thinks he fit in his community and that sort of thing. Like either he's a victim of his success, or he's a victim of his intellect, those types of things. I think it's a really good album. Whenever I want to hear like hip hop or rap, I usually go to Kid Cudi just because I like his style, and I also think it's a little bit more melodic than a lot of stuff, and what he's singing about a lot of times makes more sense to me. Mm-hmm. Like I'm very far removed from the hip hop world. That's just not where I grew up, but I think that the way that he does it makes hip hop more accessible to me.
Yeah.
And I like it a lot. This is another one that I'll throw another wrench possibly into.
I like that he took trying to like confuse me as a challenge.
You're right. Yeah. No, I dig
it. So, are you guys familiar with a group called Battlefield Band?
No.
The name sounds familiar.
Okay, so this is a group that got together in like 1969, and they've had a lot of different lineups. It's a Scottish folk band.
Cool.
They have an album
before then, but
okay. They have an album that came out in '97 called "Across the Border." I think this is one of the best Scottish folk band albums I've ever heard, and I've listened to a lot of them because I do like Scottish folk music. This album in particular, I recommend because I think they're just very talented in general. Also, it's not the way that they sing and the way that they play is not your traditional folk music. It is like a little bit spiced up. They don't have any like unusual instruments in it. It's mostly, you've got your bagpipes, but they use parlor pipes, so they're a little bit more quiet. They have a lot of like the traditional folk drums and banjo, guitar, violin. That's that type of thing. So the instruments themselves are not what spices it up. It's the way that they play spice it up. And there's a lot of songs in it that I think are just interesting songs because they're folk songs from a particular time in Scottish history. One song I really like that's on the album is called The Green and the Blue. And the green and the blue, what I think it's about is the Scottish spirit giving up and finally industrializing and accepting English domination.
Wow.
And it's about people, I think, moving from small rural communities in Scotland to Glasgow and industrializing because that's the future. And so many people have died for Scottish freedom that they're just like, there's too many martyrs and we're not succeeding. We're just going to give up and industrialize.
I want you to have Anthony Samaroff on for that episode. Talk about that.
There you go.
We should. It's a really good album, I think. They also have a really good one. I think it's called the Trinidad Explosion or the Trinidad Explosion. It's a very famous accident that happened in a coal mine in Wales, I think, when just a bunch of people, the coal mine blew up and a bunch of people got trapped under there. And it's basically about the orphans from that. I guess that doesn't really like deviate from my love of depressing music.
Yeah. But
there's a through line. I just think sometimes you can't see it when you're you.
Yeah.
I guess so. Yeah.
I mean, you had me at Scottish folk band, so whatever.
Yeah. I love Scottish music, and actually, what's so interesting about that is, so I was recommending earlier this North Indian classical music. So North Indian classical music actually has a very roundabout influence on Scottish folk music, and we think of bagpipes as traditionally being Scottish, and they're not. They're actually from the Middle East, and so you can hear a lot of those similar types of instruments in North Indian folk music as in Scottish music. Cool. And there's also some genetic evidence that there is some common ancestry from certain North Indian groups of people and certain Scottish Celtic people, which is very, like, it's weird that they're that far away from each other, but they do have some genetic ancestry linking them, to, I guess, there was a group of people called the Aryans, not to be confused with like the Hitler Aryans, that kind of just like spread out all over the place in Europe and in North India and on the steppes and all that sort of stuff. And they do have this kind of common linkage somehow through history. And I think it is manifest a lot in their folk music, or in North Indian classical music as well. There is a similarity in the way that the music sounds that, to me, is unifying in those two types of music. And it's just interesting to me. I like both of those a lot, and I usually have those in my same mix, whatever you call it on Spotify. You're like your listening tracks or whatever. So I put North Indian and Scottish music together. Then my last recommendation. This group is also out of Brooklyn, just like Rasputina, but they're a very different type of music. It's weed rap, and it's a group called Das Racist.
I love Das Racist.
You guys know them?
Oh, yes.
$1 can.
Yeah. So they were really interesting because I started getting into them right when like YouTube rap started picking up. So they were one of the really early YouTube rap groups. And they have one album that I think is very good called Relax.
I'll have to look it up.
Okay. That album is good. Most of their stuff is just singles or mixtapes or whatever that they put out online. But they do have one album that I think is a good album. It's got a lot of good music. Let me look up what's on there, because I'm sure I will. I
had something. I don't know if it was an album per se, but I had a bunch of stuff by them that I got off somebody.
Somebody's mixtape.
It was like Fake Patois and.
Yeah, they're really interesting, and the band is an interesting band. Although I know that they're big leftists, because I used to watch a lot of their YouTube videos, and they would talk about.
What do we expect?
Right. Well, but they're a diverse group of brown people. One's Punjabi, one's Cuban, I think.
They're not my favorite group of diverse brown people. That's Bad Rabbits.
Yeah. Right. But so in this particular album, they have the song Michael Jackson, which I think is pretty good. None of their music makes any sense, but like Michael Jackson, I think, is a really good one. Then they also have Rainbow in the Dark, which I think is one of their strongest songs, even though it doesn't, like, none of the stuff makes any sense in what they're saying, but it's really good weed rap, because it's just like them like just rapping off whatever's in their mind.
Well, the Pizza Hut or Taco Bell.
Yeah, that one's good. That's
Pizza Hut. Taco. See, what's funny is he said weed rap, and I had hopes that's where it was going to go, and then it did, and I was so excited. He's like, oh my God, that's racist.
They're great, and they actually do stuff on their own. Kool-Aid has some pretty good solo stuff. Yes, I mean, I wouldn't say it's amazing stuff, but it's good.
Yeah.
And then, who's the other guy? Is Kool-Aid is like the Punjabi guy, and then the other one is, and then they have a hype man who doesn't sing. He's just their hype man. So it's Kool-Aid and what's the other dude's name? I can't remember his name. I'm going to look it up real quick. Kool-Aid is the Punjabi guy.
Yeah.
And then the other dude is, let me look it up real quick.
I used to know it offhand.
Yeah, it's Heems. Yeah. And then Dapwell is their hype man, who just like dances in the videos and stuff. He doesn't really sing or anything. He's just there. But he might add something to it. And actually, I think Dapwell has I think one of his cousins is, or his brother or something like that, is actually a fairly famous stand-up comedian.
Cool.
Really?
Yeah, Yeah, like it's like there's like this group of people from like Dapwell and Heems and Kool-Aid all came out of the same college, I think, and they lived in a like diversity dorm, and that's how they met up, and they just were really into weed and really liked rap, but they weren't amazing rappers, but they were like, we'll just put it on YouTube anyways. So that's how they got started.
They got some hits on YouTube.
There you go.
Yeah, they did.
I love the sub bass on $1 Can. That's always been my thing. Like I just want to cruise down the street blasting the shit out of that song. Because
they've got a lot of good stuff. I like they have a song "Who's That Brown" that I think is pretty good, even though it's just the entire song is "Who's That Brown" and then they have a little bit of rapping.
Well, I mean, what is it? That $1 Can is literally just them naming off beverages in the at the bodega.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah. So I mean, it's just goofy stuff, and those are the 5 that I like. So
I'm at the Pizza Hut. I'm at the Taco Bell. I'm at the combination Pizza Hut and Taco Bell.
Yeah. But actually, Rainbow in the Dark starts out with I'm at the White Castle. I don't see it here, dog. Tiny ass hamburgers, tiny ass cheeseburgers. So it's like it's just about.
I know the song. I didn't know that it's called that.
It does make it sense.
Tiny ass cheeseburgers.
It's not kids. It's very goofy, very silly, very fun.
I will say you did break the matrix on that one. That one does kind of jump outside of the normal scope.
Yeah, right.
I guess if we're just going to classify what you listen to as weird, then maybe we can. But that requires a little broadening.
That's the common vein. Is anything that like catches my attention. Like that's what's, but but once in a while, like there's stuff that is weird, and like who I really don't like is what's Neil Gaiman's wife's name? She's in what's her name?
Helena Bonham Carter.
No.
She's in the Dresden Dolls, and
I was actually going to ask you about her earlier. I don't like her at all either.
Yeah, I can't stand her stuff. I don't think it's clever. I don't think it's original. I think it's weird for the sake of being weird.
The leftist politics involved and all that crap.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like all of that stuff. Like it's just like I like Neil Gaiman, but they're always trying to recommend me Dresden Dolls. She's actually in another group that's not bad called it's a weird act. It's kind of a weird act. It's her and this other dude who actually
Amanda
I think
Palmer. That's who it is.
Yeah, Amanda Palmer. That's it. She's in another act that's not bad, and it's like a theatrical act where she's a conjoined twin with this gay guy, and they sing songs together like as conjoined twins, and so it's like about the life of being a conjoined twin. It's like that's like her only thing that I think is slightly palatable.
Is that Evelyn?
Yeah, Evelyn, that's it. Yeah, like that's okay, but always on those like things where they try to recommend me stuff, they're always trying to recommend me Amanda Palmer, and I'm like, how do I tell this thing? I just don't want anything Amanda Palmer. I don't like her music. Well, I don't think she's good.
Let's be fair to what the algorithm is doing. That everything else that you named would totally fit in genre-wise, and that is the most important, or we'll say the most popular of the genre that you brought up. Like she is the standard.
Yeah. And I don't know, and it may be because like I'm anti-authoritarian, anti-conformist a little bit, that I'm like, I don't want to like the thing that everybody else likes.
Oh no, I'm absolutely a contrarian.
Yeah. So can I give you guys a question real quick?
You can ask us anything you like, by all means.
All right. So Mason wanted me to ask you guys this. So Mason, as the listeners have heard earlier, is the other host of Tasting Anarchy. He is thinking about trying to like get some people to start a new funk band. Now he's not a musically talented individual, neither am I. But he's good. He thinks he's good at coming up with funk band names. So he's thinking about what do you think about this funk band name called Chocolate Honey Meat?
Chocolate Honey Meat? I mean, I'm hungry now, so there's that. I'm going to be honest. It totally makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, you got Hot Chocolate and like, I mean, all those funk bands from the 70s that would fit right in with.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, I'll let him know. I'll let him know that he's. Yeah. So yeah, I asked him earlier. I was like, "Well, what do you want me to ask those guys, or do you want me to bring up anything about Tasting Anarchy?" He's like, "No, your musical taste will fill a couple of hours."
He's right about that.
I'm curious. What does he listen to?
He really likes like Modest Mouse is one of his favorites.
Okay.
he like that type of stuff. He and I don't share a lot of musical taste, but we used to ride around in his little Fiesta all the time, and every time we would get in, he'd be listening to like I have a Fiesta too, so like I'm not making fun of it.
Aww.
But we would ride. We got matching cars because we're such good friends. But he would every
He's
time
my
we would
Liberty
get
bro.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We would get in his car and he would always put on Modest Mouse. So as far as I know, that's like the only thing he listens to.
That's okay.
But
I mean, at least we can listen to it. That's an interesting thing to listen to.
Yeah, I mean, he likes Modest Mouse. I think he likes other stuff too. My old roommate, he never lived with me, but we used to like hang out and drink or smoke in the garage, and we would just put on the Bluetooth speaker, like whatever music. And I had a roommate, Nate, who's been on our show a couple of times. He's a really great guy and very free spirit, but he was really into like Infected Mushroom and like that type of like psychedelic techno. It's interesting stuff, especially with like when you're really high and like it starts playing and you're like, ooh, this is like a little bit too scary for me.
Infected Mushroom goes some weird places.
Yeah, I believe that.
Yeah,
that's down music for sure.
Well, he's the type of guy, I don't know if you guys have ever run into this type of person, and it drives me insane. He's the guy who will listen to a track for maybe 30 or 40 seconds, and he'll be like, this is a great song, and then skip to the next song.
Depends on the day. I can be that guy.
I was going to say, Nick is totally that guy.
By the way, for me, it only exists because I don't have enough hours in the day to listen to everything I want to listen to.
Okay, fair enough.
I'll get the highlights and move along. It's like watching. And
that's basically, that was him. He was like, no, I got what I wanted from that song.
I got a taste of the hook, and I'm good.
Yeah, we would sit in the garage and like I'd be like, give me the phone. We're gonna listen to my music because I'm not gonna skip around from song to song.
Well, what's funny is though, because I'll go the other way. Like I'll jump around and listen to 45 seconds of a song, get the taste that I want, and then I'll turn around and listen to one song on repeat for 4 hours because I just can't get the the infection of that song out of my head.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I feel the same way. Like sometimes I'll listen to a song on repeat forever, but I rarely will not listen to an entire song.
Yeah.
And if I do stop, it's because like I was driving and I got to a place where I got to stop, and then it'll continue later on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways, for all the listeners,
you want to go and do a quick plug?
Yeah, let me do the plugs. Is you can check out our podcast on Tasting Anarchy. We're on all of the major podcast catchers, except for SoundCloud. I haven't gotten onto SoundCloud yet, but iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, all those different ones. You can also, if you want to just tweet at me, you can. I run our Twitter. It's at Tasting Anarchy, and that's really the only plugs that I've got.
Nice.
Well, it was a lot of fun talking to you guys. I love talking to you. Yeah.
Thanks so much.
So have a good show tonight.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Take it easy.
Your blood